It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
And welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast as we talk property news after the weekend. Just back into another Monday morning. We are here 7 days a week as heard on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Amazon. The worst day of the week, well, I guess we've got to get it over and done with, so we might as well dive in head first. Monday, July the 15th today, and certainly hope that you had a cracker of a weekend, particularly if you were looking at some properties around Australia. Last Friday we were talking about how the rents have gone mental in Sydney and other parts of Australia. But we want to pick up this morning about some house rents as reported in Domain in 20 coastal suburbs across southeast Queensland, which have surged past the $1,000 per week. It's driven by a wave of sea and tree changes from Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane. As I say, this is according to Domain's median weekly house rents in the Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast, which has increased by up to 35% in the past year. Big numbers. Let's have a look at them. Where is it strong? Broadbeach Waters. That is topping the list at $1,300 per week, with multiple suburbs at around $1,200. In Currumbin, rents rose 34.8%, the second highest increase. Airlie Beach saw unit rents soar. Boy, this is a big number, 41.3% to $650 per week. So let's right now go to the Sunshine Coast and catch up with Kirsty Munro from Harcourts. So she is the head of property division there in Noosa. And a very good morning to you, Kirsty. Welcome to the Real Estate Breakfast. I always say such a lovely spot to be in. You're the envy of many this morning in Noosa.
Yeah, it's a beautiful part of the world. So nice blue skies at this present moment.
Yeah, well, it's always nice and fine. So some of those numbers, they're sort of crazy numbers in terms of the growth. Melbourne tenants and some Brisbane, these sea changes, they're driving your demand by the look of that article.
Yeah, correct. So I've had a multiple inquiry from, clientele out of the Queensland region that's wanting to move to the area.
So tell us a little bit about the high-end rental market. A lot of these tenants, now this is kind of a little bit unusual, I would have thought. Some of these high-enders, they're still working and living in Melbourne, yet they're renting in Noosa. Explain that to us.
Yeah, that's correct. So I have a current clientele that's, virtually working and living in Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, etc., that they're wanting to rent a property for 6 to 12 months in the Noosa Sunshine Coast region. Current tenant of mine, he flies back and forth to work and works around Australia. His residence is in Noosaville.
So when you say that they've got residents in Melbourne, are these people homeowners that are renting in Noosa and having this second property?
Correct, yes. In their property elsewhere and then virtually just rent for, in the Noosa region just for a sea change.
So how big is this in terms of numbers? Like how many of these sorts of clients have you got on your books?
I'd probably say a good 30 to 40% of our clientele virtually works away from home multiple times of the year.
Now, it mentions Melbourne, but you've obviously got to have a lot of Sydneyites, eh?
So one of my current tenants, which is in one of our prestige properties, he probably travels back and forth every 2 to 3 weeks to Melbourne and Sydney.
It's got to be good for the Noosa economy, one would suggest, having all of these. I suppose they're at the top end of the market, they're homeowners, and this is a little bit like a batch, I guess, in many cases.
Yeah, well, you can virtually rent something, fully furnished for up to $1,500 a week, and it's 200 metres from the beach.
Now, you were saying that, this prestige sector, they do look for these striking 4-bedroom homes. Everything is there, and they're quite happy to outlay some of this coin right up to $2,500 a week.
Correct. Yeah. So a couple of my properties are our prestige properties. One of them that I mentioned in the article, they're paying $26.50 per week. That landlord literally thought of everything. He wanted the tenants just to basically bring their clothing and their personal belongings and virtually relax. So they work from home and they work around Australia, these tenants. So it's very convenient for them.
All right, we're talking to Kirsty on our Monday morning. She is in Noosaville. We will come back. We'll talk more property after this.
From powerful and up-to-date news to professional real estate experts with the latest property trends on the Real Estate Podcast.
Well, it was all happening yesterday afternoon, wasn't it? Donald Trump being the target of this assassination attempt during a rally in Pennsylvania. Trump posted on his Truth social media site stating that the bullet pierced the upper part of his right ear. The shooter, who was killed by the Secret Service, made the most serious assassination attempt on a president or presidential candidate since Ronald Reagan was shot all those years ago back in 1981. Despite the attack, Trump's aides have announced that the Republican convention would proceed as planned. And you've got to really wonder now about Biden, because there have been these calls for him to step down. I would suggest that there is absolutely no way that Biden is going to be able to continue with his run. So don't be too surprised in the next few days if that's what happens next. There is 4 months until these November elections, still a lot to come between now and then. And I guess what happens next is anybody's guess, really.
It's the Real Estate Podcast, talking properties from 6 a.m. every day, from every corner of the Australian real estate market.
And it is a Real Estate Monday. We are in the lovely spot on the Sunshine Coast of Noosa, and we are talking to Kirsty Munro this morning. And Kirsty, just talking about Noosa, geographically, it is really just ideally suited for all the activities. Of course, north and south, you're in a much-loved geographical location as much as anything else.
Yeah, that's right. So you can virtually, you've got an hour and a half to Brisbane City, or hour in the other direction where you want a rural charm of your visitation. So Noosa's in the centre of everything, and it's the best location in the sunny coast, I believe.
Now, tell us a little bit about the investors, because this is interesting. A lot of investors are buying into Noosaville, and they're then renting out the property. They're travelling off overseas, are they, for 12 months and then coming back?
Yeah, yep. So I've got a couple of landlords at the moment that they've sold their property, let's say within the Sunshine Coast region or any other area around Australia, and they've decided to travel for 12 months overseas or, around Australia, and then they're renting their properties out for that period with the option with a possible extension to tenants within the region.
Is that something that you've kind of noticed since post-COVID, where people are coming in, they're doing that and they're taking off overseas?
Most definitely, because there's so many people with their work options now that could do work from home and work remotely. So they're still working as such when they're travelling, because everything's just on a computer or a laptop now.
Yeah, we've kind of talked about that. We've drilled down before on the Sunshine Coast, because it really has been the benefactor of the work from home, the office at home. It all changed post-COVID, and by the sound of it, that is continuing.
Correct. I am finding a lot more tenancies virtually work from home. Probably a good 75% of our tenants are always home.
So that's good for business, for you guys, as far as the game that you are in.
100%, yep. And that's an idea for investors that are, building other properties or have a current investor that have investments. They always think of having an area for work from home clientele. So it's always a pinpoint and a prioritising when the tenants are looking for homes.
Yeah, and it's not exactly a hard sell. I mean, the area in itself is the one that's doing all of the selling. You see the pictures, you see the prices. It is all just heading in one direction. Now, I just want to come back to people travelling, these investors that take off for 12 months. Really nice to be some, You can just rent it out, get some income, come back and then live in that particular property. But another thing that is happening is that people are doing that nationally. They're buying, they're then travelling with their kids. They're taking 12 months with their kids before they go into school. So talk to that end of the market.
I guess, COVID probably also did have a part of that decision for landlords as well. There's so many, sicknesses and stuff that's identified now since COVID. So when landlords sell their properties and they've got young children, what better option to take the opportunity to go travel for 12 months, see Australia and just have your children with you?
It sounds like a great thing to be able to do with the children. And then if we just come back to the rise of some of these properties, with the more expensive properties, like we know that average median rents, you can have 80, 100 people out the door. How hotly contested is it in the prestige market? In other words, if you've got a property for $1,000 a week, have you got some of these people saying, well, look, I'll give you $1,100 if you pick me?
Well, unfortunately, with the new rental reforms, we can't actually do that anymore. I do, with properties over $1,000, I do still have a high demand of clientele wanting to lease them properties. Like back to the property that's $26.50 a week, that was on the market for 10 days. Probably had a good 11 applications or inquiry about it.
And so when you say 10 or 11, they're all quality inquiries, I guess. It's a case of eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Who do you pick?
Yeah, that's the landlord's decision at the end of the day.
All right, well, great to catch up with you, Kirsty. As I said, you're in a very envious spot there in Noosaville. Good luck moving forward. Sounds like you've got plenty on the go. And thank you so much for coming on to the Real Estate Breakfast on this Monday morning. Enjoy your day.
Not a problem, anytime.
If you're confused about the property market, don't be. Unlock and educate yourself with the latest trending analysis and interviews.
What we're finding is that about 70% of the growth in home values in the combined capital cities for the month of June was driven by Brisbane, Perth and Adelaide.
You have to really go north for the cyclone to have had the major damage north of here up through the Daintree in that area. As 1,000 homes went under and everybody's trying to rebuild to different sort of levels.
But we're the ones where they are constantly in rental arrears and their ledger is not strong. And even if they are still in rental arrears, we actually work with them and put a plan in place with their financials to make sure that they pay off any rental debt prior to us actually starting to commence on looking for a new property.
The skyline is constantly changing, growing and expanding. We deliver the most property podcasts across Australia every week.